Section 6 of Lavender Lit 101. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. E. Maxwell Snurge by Noel Coward. Recording by 2Win. I will not seek to write of E. Maxwell Snurge as his friends have written of him, tall, courageous, and vitally intelligent, nor as his enemies have chronicled him, short, fat, and intensely stupid. I will endeavor, with a few brief flourishes of the pen, to portray the various intricacies of his character as I see them, clearly and dispassionately, with the eyes of a psychological observer, whose hand is uncorrupted by the bribes of ruthless profiteers, grafters, and the like. It is my desire to convey to the reader the real E. Maxwell Snurge, shorn of tawdry trappings of party politics and the illusion and glamour of public idolatry. A man, just a man, but what a man! To dwell on the widely circulated story of his life would be needless, and to follow his political career merely futile. What is there left, you ask? And I answer you with extreme firmness. There is one aspect of E. Maxwell Snurge which has never been seriously analyzed: his soul. And it is that, and that alone, which will be the foundation stone of my structural portrayal of his character. Why wasn't E. Maxwell Snurge President of the United States? Many have asked that question. He frequently used to ask it himself, and his wife, the sainted Amy Snurge of ever-revered memory, would rest her thin ascetic hand upon his coat-sleeve and answer him with yearning sympathy but little satisfaction. Why? Let us turn to an early episode in his career in our search for the key to the complexities of his mind, an episode slight in itself but well worthy of recording if only for the illumination it throws upon the much-questioned motives of his later actions. He was spending a week-end with friends on Long Island, a fishing week-end. Mrs. Jake Van Opis, formerly the lovely Consuelo Root, out of consideration for her eminent guest and with great tact and charm, immediately he arrived, made a point of forbidding politics as a subject for discussion in the house, and confined the general conversation exclusively to fish. That this thoughtful act was appreciated by the overworked politician it is needless to remark. He settled down to his brief respite with a tranquil contentment and complete blankness of mind, which only the cleverest of us can assume at will. Athletic from birth, Snurge cast his line repeatedly far out to sea with the strength and dogged perseverance which characterized his every deed. But alas, nearly 15 hours went by before his patience was rewarded. Day had turned to dusk, and the sun was setting when he was suddenly jerked from the fishing stand into the water. With an exultant shout, he clambered onto a rock, still clasping his rod. "A bite! A bite!" he cried in tones strangely alien from those he customarily employed when addressing a civic conference. "A bite at last!" Playing his submarine quarry with extraordinary finesse, he eventually, amid laudatory shouts and frantic cheering, landed an exquisitely striped bass, which lay at his feet gasping, apparently quite exhausted by its struggles to evade captivity. Now comes the point of the story. Snurge surveyed his catch quietly for a few moments. Those standing nearby noticed sternly repressed tears in his eyes. Then he said a thing which, come what may, will eternally prove him the possessor of unparalleled insight and humanity. Touching the recumbent fish gently with his foot, he sighed deeply. "This bass is democracy," he murmured, "and see what I have done with it." Superstitious observers state that at this point the bass closed its eyes wearily, but this may only be a fanatical exaggeration. Then with a set face he lifted the fish high above his head and flung it back into its native element, thereby undoing the efforts of many hours' untiring labor and patience. I have told this story in order to illustrate definitely the initial weakness in his lifelong policy. Call it folly, if you like, or even imbecility, but I prefer to assign to it the one all-embracing word, generosity. He was too generous. All through his career he sacrificed everything through his generous capacity foreseeing and sympathizing with both sides of every question. Many, many times he would shelve the carefully formulated schemes of months on the sudden realization of what the opposition would suffer if he carried them through. Think, as I sometimes think, what a sad thing, what a vortex of conflicting emotions the heart of Amy Snurge must have been during those hard years, knowing her husband's strength and resource, deploring yet loving his weakness, encouraging, aiding, and abetting his every act with the feminine pertinacity which has characterized the world's greatest heroines. Poor woman, no wonder the grave claimed her so soon, for like the Bass, like democracy, her vitality was exhausted by the destructive and constructive force of Snurge. Only, unlike the Bass, she couldn't swim well, and unlike democracy, she had the man to contend with as well as the politician. Snurge was by no means a revolutionary. He possessed too many ideals and too little passion. He was essentially a passionless man, except, of course, the one historic occasion during his campaign against prohibition when he completely lost control, and flying low in a government aeroplane broke a bottle of green chartreuse over the head of the Statue of Liberty. The uproar which was the natural outcome of this defiant protest was abruptly stemmed by the sudden reversal of his tactics on the day following the event, when he made a spirited appeal in West 42nd Street for prohibition. This resulted in a hopeless gloom enveloping the metropolis. The populace commenced to realize in a measure the unreliability of Snurge as a savior of the state, while at the same time fully appreciating his many sterling qualities. Dark things were whispered in the White House. One need not go far, then, to seek the reason for his fall from grace, his utter failure as a Republican candidate for the presidency. It was his generosity, his innate humanity, and his extraordinary breadth and clarity of vision. If this man had but been president in 1914, there might not have been any war. Had he been president in 1776, there might not have been any revolution. And had he but been president in 1491, God knows what there might not have been. End of Section 6. E. Maxwell Snurge by Noel Coward. Recording by 2 Win.